Alex, I thought the snow was over. I really did.
My man, it's still February.
It was 60 degrees on Friday.
I know, and it's 30 degrees today. It's wintertime in the northern hemisphere. And what do you expect in wintertime? Especially as far north as we live, it's going to snow.
Yeah, but it was 62 days.
Yeah. Welcome to the beauty of living in a weird part of the world.
You can't have 4 seasons in one day.
But we did. But we did.
Called seasons.
I know. It was just that little teaser that what they call it, false spring, where it warms up and you're like,
yeah,
man, this is nice. And it's like, actually, it's still wintertime. Don't forget that.
Anyway, welcome everybody to Life with the Complete Story. I am your host, Tyler, joined by my lovely co-host, Alex. We are here today to talk about frogs, as we have been. Today we're talking about toads, actually. But first, we will get started with our nature in the news, as we typically do. Today's article comes from the Oxford University Press, USA, about fleas and ticks and how your pest treatment for your pets actually causes some harm to wildlife. So what this talks about is how the treatment you use for your dog or your pet. I don't know what you use, Alex. I don't know if you do, because Carmela's more of an indoor dog.
Yeah, I don't know if
it's an oil treatment. The I can't say that. Isoxazoline.
Yeah, that sounds about isoxazoline.
Yeah, is a anti-parasitic medication that is an oil treatment instead of a shot or whatever you used to give your dogs for fleas and ticks. But basically, what we're getting at is that isoxazoline contaminates ecosystems, kind of like a pesticide would back in like the 70s. It still kind of does. But other insects are also exposed that aren't the targets, but they also suffer the same like consequences. Such like flies, dung beetles, and butterflies are the main like problems or
that makes
at-risk
sense.
Species. Yeah,
that makes sense. The ones that are going to be feeding on the animal feces quite right.
Yeah. So your groups were 20 dogs and 20 cats, owned by the veterinary students. They received this treatment over 3 months, and they collected fecal samples to measure how much of the active ingredient of the medicine stayed within their feces, and how much exposure so they could measure how much exposure these dung feeding insects would be under. And the impact was that you could find high levels of exposure to the isoxazoline compounds from routine treatment. This can, disrupt important ecological processes, especially if we're hurting butterflies, dung beetles, things that eat the poop.
Yeah, because the flea and tick treatments, while they are arachnids, they are still arthropods, very closely related to the flies, beetles, butterflies. Yes. So they're gonna have fairly similar biological processes. So it is most certainly going to harm them just the way it would the fleas and ticks.
But that's all I have for this article. Once again, that was published by the Oxford University Press. And we'll get into our lesson today. We're talking one family today compared to the 3 we've been talking about each episode. Today we're talking Bufonidae. These guys are your true toads. This is the only family where all members are known as toads, although sometimes they are known as harlequin frogs, so not quite only known as toads. There are over 35 genera within this group, the genera Bufo being the best known and most well documented. The belief is that they originate in South America, dating back to around the late Cretaceous, and there was a rapid divergence in radiation, believed to be facilitated by the changing climate of the Paleogene epoch. They are native to all continents but Australia and Antarctica, and are widely spread throughout. They can live anywhere from the rainforest to the arid regions. They lay their eggs in paired strings compared to the large clumps and masses of other frog species. They hatch into tadpoles, obviously. Some do have a direct development, but it's very rare in this family. They are generally toothless and warty in appearance. They have a parotid glands on the back of their head, and these glands contain a alkaloid bufotoxin, which we've talked about occasionally on the show in the past. Different frogs have different bufotoxins, so the bufotoxin of the cane toad is fairly toxic and kills most
Yes.
things. Whereas the bufotoxin of other toads is known to have like psychedelic effects, and others still have just weaker toxins that don't really affect humans. Some members have what's described as it's called a bitters organ, which, to my knowledge, is kind of like a endocrine. And then, so it has miniature egg follicles, which have the capability of becoming active. So in the castration of a male toad, the bitters organ enlarges and becomes a egg cell. So it's like a involuntary gender change.
Interesting.
In the event of the loss of male reproductive organs, they can develop female reproductive organs.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yes.
And it seems like not every single member, at least if they have the bufotoxin, it's like the American toad, like the Eastern American toad is at least trying to do a quick search. It doesn't look like it really. If it has it, it's not really super. No, it said so yeah, you're not supposed to touch the crests. So they do have the bufotoxin, but it's a mild. For humans, mostly irritating to the eyes and mucous membranes, but can be dangerous to smaller animals when ingested. So that is why I've never gotten sick picking up toads. Then I usually grab them, try to hold them from the bottom or like along the back.
I grip them by like not the head.
Obviously. Yes,
yeah.
Try to stay away from the head.
Grab them at the abdomen.
Yes. Sorry, a little.
But that'll take us
moment.
into our genera. Our first one is going to be a demon Adenomus. Alex, you want to tell us about it real quick?
Yes, Adenomus, it's a small genus of true toads, only has 2 species endemic to Sri Lanka. One of them was considered extinct, Adenomus candianus, considered extinct for 133 years, but was recently rediscovered in the Kandy area in October 2009. They're fairly slender toads that lack the supraorbital ridge. So a lot of toads you'll see kind of have a ridge that goes over top of like the head, like the eyeballs, kind of sticks out a little bit. And they have smooth finger edges as opposed to like very kind of granular, like warty fingers. The largest is the other species, Adenomus celarti, where the female,
which is the pictured one.
Yes, which the females can reach 50 millimeters or 2 inches in a snout to vent length. There is a third species that may be part of this group, recognized in 2015, but it shows some distinct morphological differences, but negligible genetic divergence. So there may be a third species being added to this genus, but I think they're probably still working on some of that.
All right, that'll bring us to the next group, which is going to be Altophrinoids, which is another genus of toads, commonly referred to as the Ethiopian toads. They are found in the highlands of south-central Ethiopia, in the Bale, Sidamo, and Arusi provinces. Both species, there are 2 species in this group, are threatened by habitat loss and were formerly included in another genus we're going to talk about a little bit later, but lack the reproductive mode for that genus. And some people classify it as a monotypic genus, where the Osgood's Ethiopian toad is actually part of another genus, so separate from the other genus they were put previously in.
Interesting. Next is the genus Amazophrynella. As you kind of can figure out based on the name, they are found throughout the Amazon basin. Pretty group of very small toads, only maxing out at just under 30 millimeters or just over 1 inch in the snout, the vent length. Very well developed hind limbs. They lack parotoid glands, and they also lack vocal slits and tympana. So they have pretty cryptic coloration, as you can see here. They are pond breeders, which is considered like an ancestral trait of the buffonoids. And there are 12 species, I believe I saw in this. Yes, 12 species in this genus.
Yeah, and they all look relatively similar.
Yeah, they have they're kind of flat. They have very pointed snouts. As you can kind of see in the picture, very thin heads.
And that'll take us to our next group, Anazyrus, which is the trying to stop. Alex stole my. I was like, why did
I got it.
I stop sharing? Alex stole it from me. So these are the Anazyrus, the North American toads. They are endemic, obviously, to North and Central America, and has a lot of our familiar species, like the American toad, Woodhouse's toad, and the Western toad. They were originally classified in that group Bufo, but the genetic differences were too great, and there was too much geographic separation to really keep that classification, and they made their own genus. So there are a grand total of 23 toads in this group, and as I said, there's quite a few pretty popular, well-known toads.
Such as the one I pulled up is the American toad, Anaxyrus americanus.
I see those all the time.
Yes, as do I. Yeah, these toads are pretty stout, very warty, as you can see in the picture. Pretty commonly, actually, I think pretty much all of them have that cryptic coloration. A lot of browns and greens and blacks.
I'll bring us to our next group, which is Ansonia.
Yes, Itsonia. This is a genus found in South India, northern Thailand, the Malay Peninsula, Borneo, and the Philippines. These are a small forest species. They spawn in streams, and so their tadpoles are adapted to that. So they are commonly called stream toads, also known as slender toads. Again, very long and skinny with that cryptic coloration. There are 36 species within this genus.
If you want a picture for that, I will pull one.
Yeah, if you want to pull one up real quick.
This is the Kinabalu slender toad.
Yes. So you can see very, very kind of longer, very skinny laterally.
That'll bring us to our next group, the stubfort toads, Adelopus. This is one of the larger groups within this group, this family. They are known as the harlequin frogs. They're found in Central and South America, from Costa Rica to Bolivia. They are small, bright-colored, and diurnal, which means they are most active during the day, and they are found in mid to high elevation. The genus itself has been pretty affected by amphibian declines, mostly through habitat loss, pollution, and dreaded chytrid fungus, which what you'll realize for most South American and Central American frog species is the bane of their existence.
A very wide variety of colorations for these frogs. Some of them have this very bright yellow and black kind of dots striping. Some of them are more cryptic in coloration.
Quite the spectrum there.
Yes,
yeah. And it's also noted that almost 40% of all members of this genus are possibly extinct. And if you add the data deficient species where they haven't quite done enough research to do any type of population ecology on them, it increases to nearly 50%. So half of them could be extinct out of the 96 species.
Yeah. Yep. Our next genus is Barbarophrinae. I got a picture. This is a monospecific genus which has the Brongerma's toad, which is Barbarophrinae brongersmi, also known as the Tisnit toad, found in Algeria and Morocco. Relatively small toad, only about 5 centimeters, 2 inches. Again, originally placed in the genus Bufo, and then Pseudopedalia before it was made its own genus in 2013. Naturally found in subtropical or tropical dry shrubland, that very Mediterranean shrubby vegetation with intermittent water areas like marshes, rivers, ponds. They're pretty adaptable, but mostly a semi-arid, sparsely vegetated areas. And they have adapted to some disturbed areas, but their biggest threat is habitat loss. But these guys are still as the least concern as they are now.
All right. Our next group is going to be Blithophorine. This is a monotypic genus with one member, Blithophorine berrier. These guys are found on the Andaman Islands, which is off the coast of India. And they're only about 24 millimeters, which is just under an inch long. And due to that small size, that's how they do distinguish them from other genera. They have 6 presacral vertebrae and an elongated pair of parotid glands. And they have expanded discs at their digit tip, so your sticky fingers are extended.
That'll move us into Bufo. That's that kind of very popular genus we talked about. Kind of traditionally colloquially known as the wastebasket genus within this family. Kind of everything was lumped into here until it was separated out. And following a lot of changes in taxonomic reviews, there leaves only 17 extant species found primarily in Europe, North Africa, and Asia, including the very well-known common toad, or European toad, which I have pictured. And you may still see some other genus still referred to as Bufo, like all the American toads we just talked about a little bit ago. These toads have the very common stocky with short legs, the dry, thick skin with the wart appearance. They have those parotoid glands, and they have that bufotoxin that they excrete from those glands. You can kind of see them right behind the head, sticking up a little bit. It's that kind of fatty white poison that is that predator deterrent. Are 20, as I said, there's 17, and it has now been upped a little bit after even more review. There are 24 extant species now. I apologize.
Yeah, a couple new ones coming.
Yeah,
within the last decade.
Yeah, a couple of them like early 2020s. There's a handful of them that were early 2020s, and some all the way back into the early 1800s. So it's a very widely studied genus within.
That'll bring us to our next group, Buphoides. This is a small genus of the true toads, endemic to northeast India, with another species found in the Garo and Khasi Hills. It was monotypic up until 2016, whenever a separate toad was transferred over to this genus. So I assume it was in that wastebasket.
No, actually.
No, it was from the Pedostebes genus. If I read the species name, I would have, known that. Because they have a generally similar morphology as well as relatively close geographically.
Yes.
They're small toads, reaching about anywhere between 1.2 and 1.9, depending on the species. Or up to that, depending on the species.
Inches.
Yes. Units matter.
They do.
Math teachers are screaming at me. And they have postorbital, supraorbital, and preorbital ridges. And they have short ovular parotid glands with no visible tympanum, with poorly dilated rounded discs on their tips of their digits. And they have that granular, woody dorsal skin with basal webbing on their fingers, but their toes have complete webbing. So, yeah.
Next will be Buphotes. These are the Eurasian green toads or pale Arctic green toads. These are native to Europe, except for the British Isles, most of Fennoscandia, which is kind of the Scandinavian peninsula, and most of France and the Iberian Peninsula. They can also be found in Western and Central Asia and Northern Africa. Again, historically included in Bufo, but have been since separated out. They have that typical toad look. They kind of have a greenish spotted pattern. Not all of them do. Some of them are like, there's one, it's those Middle Eastern toads tend to be more of a sandy color, which makes sense. They have a very wide range of habitats, primarily laying their eggs in freshwater, but there are some that actually can lay it in brackish water, so that's slightly more salty water. Medium to small to medium sized toads between 3.5 and 12 centimeters, or 1.5 to almost 5 inches in that snot to vent length. Of course, depending on the species. Females typically larger. Males do have a vocal sac, so they will have distinct sound displays for mating. They have very distinct parotoid glands and tympanum. Some of them in the Cerdus subgroup has a couple of the Asian species that their parotoid glands and tympanum are much smaller, and they may even have no tympanum. And these are sometimes called earless toads. There's about 15 distinct species within this group.
Will take us to our next group, Capensa bufo. These are the Cape toads or mountain toadlets found in South Africa. And that's really all there is about these guys. Generally kind of smaller, only about 1.5 inches, while males are only about 1 inch long. A longer body and short hind legs and unwebbed toes, with a variable mottled color on their dorsal side.
Next is the genus Churamiti or Kuramiti. This is a monospecific genus, the Kuramiti maridati. The species is found in the Mamawa Kisara Forest Reserve in the Ukaguru Mountains, found in Tanzania. There's only been 4 specimens actually found that were known, so it is considered a critically endangered species. They are medium small toads, about 5.5 centimeters or 2.25 inches. They have a wide flattened head with a blunt snout. They are typically a very deep metallic yellow color on the back, and then the limbs are kind of a yellowy pink color, and they have large expanded finger and toe tips. The specimens that were collected were found in moist valleys at higher elevations, about 1,800 meters or about 6,000 feet above sea level. It's an arboreal species, and because that critical endangered listing is because of its restricted range and habitat loss.
Why do I always get the hard names? Dendroforensicus. These are the tree toads. Dendro, tree, right?
Yep.
Dendrology?
Yes, that is the study of trees.
Yes. Until about 20 was this included that species that was an Amazon frenella that we talked about, and they were separated based off molecular evidence. They are now their own genus, small to medium, so medium toads, measuring about 1/2 inch up to 1.85 inches in that snout vent, and their body form resembles those of the harlequin frogs with well-developed hind limbs. They have absent parotoid glands, as well as absent external tympana. They have a uniformly granular skin, and they have that cryptic dorsal coloration, blending in with like dead leaf litter and things like that.
Next, we've got the 4-digit toads in the genus Didynamipus. Yeah, Didynamipus. It's a single species within this Didynamipus shostedeti. Close enough. Found in Bioko, or Equatorial Guinea, southwestern Cameroon, and southeastern Nigeria. These are very small toes, with the males only growing about 16 millimeters or 0.6 inches, and females 19 millimeters or 0.7 inches in length. They have a very sharp snout in the males, but much more rounded in the females. And the males will have a ridge on the top of the snout that kind of gives it an upturned appearance. Absent tympanum, they have very reduced hands and feet with only about 2 outer fingers and toes. The inner toes are really only tubercles with no webbing. They have a brown kind of mottled coloration found on forest edges or in clearings at moist moist forest areas for relatively low elevations, about 200 to 1,200 meters above sea level, or about 660 to just under 4,000 feet. Mainly in the leaf liver or perched atop low-growing vegetation. And they do have they do kind of lay their eggs in terrestrial areas. Is a vulnerable species due to habitat loss because of that forest edge, but it has been found in farmland areas, so it's adapting, but not well enough.
All right. Our next group is Dudaphrynus, the Duda's toads, or Duda, I don't know, named after Sushil Kumar Duda, and they are found in southern China, as well as Taiwan, and throughout southern Asia from Pakistan through India and Bangladesh, as well as Sri Lanka and some Indonesian islands. They are characterized by their prominent bony ridges. They have a short, blunt snout, a very small tympanum, and the first finger of these toads extends beyond the second, half-webbed toes, and the upper surface features are regular, porous warts with prominent parotoid glands, and this was one of those genus that was previously in the Bufo group before being diversified to their own.
Cool. Next is the natterjack toad in the genus Epidalia. This is Epidalia columita. It is a monospecific genus. This toad is native to the sandy and heathland areas of Europe, including the United Kingdom. Medium-sized toads, about 60 to 70 millimeters, or 2.5 to almost 3 inches in length. They're distinguished from the common toads because they have a yellow line down the middle of the back, which you can almost see in this picture, as well as they have parallel parotoid glands. Again, those short legs, so they have more of a walking gait as opposed to the hopping. They are known for the very loud and distinct mating call from the males. They do live quite a while, up to 15 years. Again, like many toads, feeding primarily on insects, and they're more nocturnal, moving around open terrain at night. You can see their tracks sometimes in the loose sand.
All right, our next group is going to be Pheruzophrynus, which is a small genus, relatively new. I think it was identified in 2020. These are the Pheruza's toads, found in the Middle East and South Asia. Really it. Since it's so new, there's not a lot of information on what makes them special compared to other groups, but includes a couple marble toads and things like that are found throughout India as well as the Middle East.
Nice. That'll take us to the genus Frostius, or the frost toads. They are a small genus having 2 species endemic to Brazil. As you can kind of see in the pictures, the toads themselves are also very small. They were kind of separated out in the late 1980s. It was previously classified in the Etelopus genus with the harlequin toads, but is now its own genus. There's only 2, as I said, 2 species. The frost toad, Frostius pernambucensis, and then the more recently described erythrothalamus toad.
It'll take us to our next group, Gadaphrine. These are a very small genus of 2 species, which was kind of moved over in 2021. I guess the genus is Bolera now. It used to be Gadaphrine. They are small-sized toads, reaching only about 1.2 inches, and females up to 1.4. They have a reddish-brown dorsal side with a dark brown, almost black ventral side. They don't have parotoid glands, and they have fingers that are free of webbing, whereas their toes have a medium webbing. And they have sparse granular projections, mostly towards the end. And they have clear, translucent eggs.
That will then move us into the genus Encilius, is one of our larger genus. This is where the golden toad is found. These toads are known as the Central American or Middle American toads because they're found in the southern U.S., Mexico, Central America, and as well as northern Pacific South America, so Colombia and Ecuador. Very diverse group of toads. They're having even some micro-endemic species like the golden toad, which were found in undisturbed cloud forests. First described in the 1860s and has been more recent, has been worked on as far as that taxonomy until even very recently. 39 species found currently. It's had quite a few name changes in the past number of years, as well as being separated from other groups due to more recent genetic testing.
I'll take us to our next group, Injurophrynus. These are the Hainan toads found throughout Southeast Asia, the Indochina Peninsula, as well as abundance of Indonesian islands and the Philippines. There are currently 12 species, most of these being former members of Bufo. They are named after Robert F. Inger, an American zoologist, and they have those supraorbital, parietal, and supratympanic crests on their head. They have vocal sacs, but lack melanophores in the surrounding muscle tissue, as well as a couple other muscles, it looks like. And they have paired crests on their vertebral column and smooth palatine bones.
I'm going to hit these next three in a pretty quick succession just because they're very small, not well described groups. The first is Kenya Phrinoides, as a very recently described genus, 2023, the Kenya forest toads. There's really nothing about these guys because they're so recently described. Next is the genus Laurentophrine. It is the Parker's tree toad. It is a monospecific genus endemic to the Kivu region of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, found in the subtropical and tropical moist montane forest, so mountain forests. Currently threatened due to habitat loss. It has a straight head and pointed snout, that granular dorsal skin. Their warts actually form a distinctive X pattern on the back, typically a gray to grayish white color. And then next, our third will be the Leptophrinae, or the Indonesian tree toads. I do have a picture for these ones. So it is another small genus of only 3 species found in southeastern Asia, the Malay Peninsula, and the Greater Sunda Islands, so Indonesia being part of that. It is considered a close relative to Epidalia, and these 3 species are the Java tree toad, the Indonesian tree toad, and the Sumatran tree toad.
Our next group is going to be Melophreniskis. These are the South American red-bellied toads. They're named that because they have bright red coloration on their ventral side, or yellow, but most commonly red. They are found in Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And that's really all there is on these guys as a group.
Next, that will take us to the genus Mertensophrine. These are very small toads, as you can kind of see in the picture. Native to kind of central southern Africa, the DRC, Kenya, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. Called the snouted frogs, Corinda forest toads, or just forest toads. They, again, were part of that Bufo genus before being separated out. They lack the tympanum and a columella, which is a thin bony structure on the inside of the skull to help transmit the sounds of the eardrums. They often show reduced digits, so in their fingers and toes they tend to be smaller. There are 14 recognized species. 10 of them have been studied pretty in depth by Liedtke and their colleagues. And the females were found of a maximum snout to vent length of between 24 and 46 millimeters, or just under an inch to about 1.8 inches. But they do have relatively large eggs, about 1.8 to 2.5 millimeters. It's about a tenth of an inch in diameter, which overall, compared to other species and compared to their size, is relatively large. And they tend to have fewer numbers compared to other species, only about 35 to about 190, where many species will lay hundreds at a time.
All right, that'll take us to Metaphreniskis, which is a monotypic group. Sole member is M. sose. They're endemic to Venezuela from its type locality Cerro Marihuaca, which they live in those mountain forests and subtropical and tropical areas. After that will be Nanophrine, which is the next group. They're also found in South America in the Andean mountains from Peru to Chile and Argentina. They were in that Bufo group. Well, they were initially their own group, then they were moved to Bufo, and now they're back to their own group, Nanophrine. And now it was controversial first. Now it's kind of like widely accepted, as things typically get in the taxonomic world. People aren't really up for change until it happens, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's fine."
Yeah. Next is Nectophrine. It's also a very small genus of two species, the African tree toad and Bates's tree toad, native to that western Central Africa, so Nigeria, Cameroon, Congo kind of area. The African tree toad, Nectophrine afra, has been actually shown to have some parental care where the eggs are guarded by the males when they are after they are laid in small bodies of water.
That'll take us to Nectophrenoides. These are the African live-bearing toads. So, given their name, that means they don't lay eggs. Ovoviviparous, so that have eggs in their ovary area, and then they'll lay small develop whenever they're ready to come out, I guess. That's what makes them special. And there's a handful, I think 12 or 13 species within this group. And they're found in Tanzania and in the eastern Arctic forest.
Next will take us to another monospecific genus, Nimba. There is this one species is found in the Mount Nimba region of the Western African countries of Guinea, Liberia, and the Ivory Coast. It is one of the only anurans that combines both internal fertilization as well as ovoviviparity, which is that it's kind of like a between live birth and egg laying. So like the tadpoles will be born from the mother. First described in the 1940s, there was a second genus that was described, but then was found to be the same species. It's just one was a slightly larger size, so that's kind of more of it was considered a subspecies rather than a distinct species. Smaller toads, again, 18 to 20 millimeters. It's about 3/4 of an inch in length for the females. That was the Occidentalis, a subspecies. The Occidentalis liberiensis subspecies is slightly larger, 22.5 to almost 29 millimeters, or 0.9 to 0.1 inches in length. Variable coloration between browns and blacks. There's not really a distinct border between the two, as you can kind of see in the picture. Kind of that more elongated length with the longer legs, so they're going to be better jumpers. But again, found in those very high elevations, 1,200 to almost 1,700 meters, or about 4 to 5,500 feet. Very intolerant of disturbance. So in some of those mountain regions, that is a very big problem, because those areas have been affected greatly by mining, causing a lot of population fragmentation. Some of the population is protected in a nature reserve, but they're still critically endangered.
That'll take us to our next group, Oreophrynella, known as bush toads. They are found in Venezuela and Guyana. Some species have their locations restricted to a couple, they're called tepuis, which are like mesa-type structures, flat-top mountains, things like that. They're generally small, less than an inch in length, in that snout vent length. They have opposable digits on their feet, and their dorsal skin bears tubercles, and they have direct development. There is no tadpole stage, and that those opposable digits are unique among other bufonids.
Next will be the genus Osornophrinae. There's not a whole lot about them. They are native to the Cordillera Central in Colombia and the Central Andes in Ecuador, so they're most likely a higher elevation genus of toad with only 11 species described. Not a whole lot specifically about them, but yeah, those high altitude brushlands is a very popular area, as well as those moist forest environments.
That'll take us to Parapelophrine, which is a monotypic genus found in Hainan, China, found in evergreen broadleaf forests from 350 to 1,400 meters above sea level. The males call near small streams, which is their believed breeding habitat. They are threatened by habitat loss caused by smallholder farming activities and wood extraction. And they do have range in some protected areas.
Next is the monospecific genus Pedostibes, with the Malabar tree toad or the warty Asian tree toad being the single species Pedostibes tuberculosis, found in the western Ghats of the Great Karnataka area, which I'm not exactly sure where that's at. It is
India.
India? Okay.
The state of India.
Thank you. They are often found, it's a small species. Hold on, I forgot to pull up a picture. I have one for this. I just looked over. There we go. Small species found in wet tree hollows and leaf bases that contain water. They are, you can see they're kind of a slender frog with a medium-sized head, very pointed snout. They do have a very well-developed tympanum, and they have moderate fingers that kind of lack webbing, and they also have they do have some discs on the toes, and the toes are almost entirely webbed. It said a small to medium adults can grow about 3.6 to 3.9 centimeters in length, so
it's like an inch and a half.
Yeah, about an inch and a half.
All right, that'll take us to our next group, Palefrine, the flathead toads or the dwarf toads. They occur in the Philippines, Borneo, Malaya, Singapore, and China. They are small, semi-arboreal toads, easily recognized by their fleshy webs between their fingers and toes. And they can be divided into two groups within the genus. One with rounded but not expanded fingertips, while the other has fingertips expanded into discs. And their tadpoles are specialized for rapid development in those rainwater pools with relatively large eggs. And there is, I had it here, 13 members.
Okay. Next is the genus Peltophrine. These are the Caribbean toads, native to the Greater Antilles, to Cuba, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands. Cuba has the highest diversity with 10 endemic species, Hispaniola with 3, and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands together have 1. Smaller size, about 30 millimeters, snout to vent length are just 1.25 inches. And the smallest species, the largest is a pretty decent size, up to 170 millimeters or 6.7 inches. Wide skulls with a lot of very distinct features around the eyes and the nose. Again, part of that group that was originally in Bufo and then has since been separated out. There are 14 species, and a lot of them are part of the IUCN critically endangered list due to habitat loss from development. And some of these peltophrine lemur, which is the picture I have pulled up, this toad are actually that the wild populations are being supported by captive bred animals. So there is some work being done to try to assist their survival.
I'll take us to our next group, Oidus. This is a small genus found in mainland Southeast Asia, as well as the larger islands of Indonesia, the Greater Sundas, known as the rough toads or river toads, included in Bufo until 2006. They were large toads, really large toads, about 4.8 to 8.5 inches, depending on the species. Males are smaller than that. They have fingertips that are dilated into keratinization, and they have basal webbing on their fingertips, and their tadpoles have large oil discs as wide as the body. And they live in riparian habitats. We've talked about that quite a bit on the show the past couple weeks whenever we were talking about amphibians. And they have very large egg clutches.
Nice. Next is the genus Pointonophrynus. These are also known as the pygmy toads. There are 10 species found in sub-Saharan Africa. Originally, they were all part of Bufo, but have been since split due to a lot of taxonomic divergence from molecular markers. Again, the small toads, they lack a tarsal fold. So that'd be the tarsal. So there's not really a fold on the foot where the toes would come out. Their parotoid glands are very indistinct and flattened, but they do have a small but distinct tympanum.
Next is going to be Pseudobufo, which is a monotypic genus represented by one species, Pseudobufo subasper, found in Indonesia and Malaysia. Natural habitats are subtropical and tropical swamps. Threatened by habitat loss, as it is caught for pet trade in Indonesia, and it can only be found in peat swamps with fully webbed hind feet and live most of their lives within the water.
Nice. Next is the genus Rentopia. This is 3 recognized species in it. One of them very recently recognized in 2020. They are relatively large toads, native to Southeast Asia and the Malay Peninsula. They were separated in 2016 to kind of correct the polyphyly of the Pedostibes genus with that Malabar tree toad. Again, they're pretty large, males growing up to 80 millimeters or 3.1 inches and females up to 4.1 inches or 105 millimeters. They have the interorbital crests are absent, and they have very large, distinct parotoid glands that have a bunch of different shapes, oval, circular, or even triangular. The fingers have minimal webbing, and the tips do have flat discs on them, and the feet are fully webbed on all but the 4th toe, and the males do have nuptial pads. Primarily arboreal, which is obvious from the the discs on the fingers and toes, as well as living in that riparian vegetation near small to moderately sized forest streams, and they have small eggs that are laid in strings.
Next is going to be Raibo. This is a genus known as the coke toads. They're found in northern South America, all the way up to Honduras. They have black cephalic crests. They have yellowish orange skin secretions. And that's really it. They were in Bufo, removed, but some people still just view it as a subgenus within that Bufo genus. Next is Rhinella.
Yes, Rhinella is our largest genus of the day with 94 to 95 species.
That cane toad.
Yeah, the cane toad being one of those obvious. These are known as the beaked toads, native to neotropical parts of Mexico, Central and South America. But some, like the cane toad, has been introduced to Australia, the Caribbean, and the Philippines, as well as many other areas. Remember, we said at the beginning that they were not native to Australia, keyword being native. originally all part of Bufo, but then split into 2 genera, but they are now returned back to one genus. A variety of shapes and sizes, the cane toad, of course, being a very large toad, and then some, like the Rhinella abi, is a much smaller sized toad. Mostly cryptic coloration, those browns, greens, with some having some kind of reddish in their colors as well. But again, very notable parotoid glands, and something like the cane toad having that very strong bufotoxin.
Next, we have 2 monotypic genera that I'm going to cover both of them. We got Sabafrinus, known as the spotted Asian tree toad, with Saba earless toad, found in Borneo. They are the small medium toads, about 1.5 inches in the males and 2 inches in the females. No bony crests on their head and no parotoid glands. They have spatulate discs on their fingertips, and they lack vocal sacs and mandibular spines with a light green dorsal side. Our second monotypic group that I'm going to cover right now is the African split-skin toad, Schismoderma. The African split-skin toad, found in a variety of countries within Southeast Africa. They reach about 3.5 inches in snout to vent length, with females being larger than males, which is pretty typical as we've covered so many groups so far. They have a reddish-brown upper surface, so that dorsal side, with a pair of dark brown spots on the shoulders. They have a dorsolateral ridge with glands running from the tympanum all the way to the back leg, and the outer part of the ridge is darker on its lower edge. And you can kind of make out that ridge in the picture. It goes right along the midline between the dorsal and ventral side. Moving on, Alex, we have
Sclerophrys is our next genus, another very large genus, about 44 recognized species, native to Africa and the southern Arabian Peninsula. Again, classified originally in Bufo and then since separated out because a lot of taxonomic divergence. There's not a whole lot over the genus as a whole, but you can kind of think where they're located. Some of the drier habitats, some of them being found in like marshy areas, but a lot of that dry savanna, that shrubland area, having some green to mostly browns and kind of sand colored looks, as you can see in the picture I pulled.
Next is going to be Sigillalega I'm pretty sure I said that right.
Good.
These are known as the puppet toads. They're endemic to Sumatra, which is in Indonesia. They have both arboreal and cave-dwelling habits, which is kind of the mix-up.
Interesting.
They live in trees and rock hollows, including stratovolcanoes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they are relatively large in size. I don't have an exact size, but larger on the scale of frogs. And they all have micro and all species within this. So there's 5 species. They're all micro endemic to various localities within Sumatra.
Next is the genus Strockbufo. It is a monospecific genus. It is the Mongolian toad, Strockbufo aridae, also known as the piebald or the Siberian sand toad. Endemic to northeastern Asia, kind of the China, Mongolia, and the far eastern parts of Russia, even into North Korea. Very commonly found in the Amur River basin of China and Russia. Small to medium toad, with the adults not getting much larger than 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches, with a lot of wide-ranging habitats, but most often found in drier regions with sandy soils, even being found in the Alashan Desert or the Gobi Desert. Does not occur above 2,700 meters or 8,900 feet above sea level, but it is also not lower than 600 or 2,000 feet above sea level. Northernmost population found on the Olkhon Island in Russia's Lake Baikal, and they are among the few amphibians that are known to venture into saltwater.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so that is interesting, and they are currently a least concerned species, so that's pretty pretty good to hear.
I'm going to rapid fire a couple. We're on the home stretch here.
Yeah.
Next up is Trubella, which is found in the Junin and Ayacucho regions of Peru. And there's 2 members. Not much is really known about them. They're relatively small, about an inch in length in the males and about an inch and a half in females. After that, we have Van Dyckefrinus, Van Dyck's toads, found throughout southern Africa, named after Eddie Van Dyck, South African herpetologist. They were originally in that Bufo genus, now described as its own. They reach about that inch and a half, kind of like staple length, we'll say, for this family. Seems to be the median or even the average length for some of these toads. And then we have Werneria, the small tongue or torrent toads, found in Central Africa, with the greatest richness in the western high plateau of Cameroon, named after Franz Werner, an Austrian zoologist. And they are medium-sized toads, about 1.2 to 2 inches in, well, the females tend to be larger than the males. They don't have any hearing organs, vocal sacs, or parotid glands. And they have a smooth skin.
Nice. Our last 2 genus, another couple small genus. First is Wolterstorfina, or the Wolterstorff toads.
Sorry.
Are a small genus of 3 species, native to Nigeria and Cameroon. Their name honors the German geologist and herpetologist Willi Wolterstorff. There's not much else about these guys so far. And then lastly is the genus Xanthophrinae, to round out this family. Small genus of 2 species found in the western Ghats of India. They are, again, small toads with adult males topping out at 33 millimeters or 1.3 inches, and the females topping at 35 or 1.4 inches in length. They have a kind of light brown to dull chromy yellow color on the dorsal side, and the flanks and abdomen have more of that chromy yellow coloration. Distinct tympanum, no webbing between the fingers and toes, and they lay their eggs more in clutches than in the strings. And that will wrap us up for this family Bufonidae.
Thank you guys for sticking with us. It's been quite the episode so far. Unfortunately, we're not done yet. We still have our recurring segments. I'll kick us off with our amazing species. Alex, today we're talking about the variable harlequin frog. I picked it because it looks so majestic.
It is
so
cool.
pretty. It's got that mottled kind of black and yellow, almost camouflage like patterning to it, like a military camouflage.
Yes.
These guys are found in the rainforests of Costa Rica and Panama. They're listed as critically endangered because of a drastic population decline in the 80s and 90s due to the effects of the chytrid fungus, as well as a whole bunch of other factors, resulting in a loss of at least 80% of the population. And there is an estimated further 80% of the remaining population in that 21-year window from 2002 to 2023. There are 2 extant subpopulations in Costa Rica, and it was recorded recently in Panama, and then we don't have enough data right now to conclude that those declines have stopped. They are found at an upper elevation of 2,000 meters. We don't quite have a population trend right now, whether it's stabilized or still declining. And it used to be pretty common before chytrid came around, with over 100 known subpopulations on both sides of Costa Rica, the Atlantic and the Pacific, as well as in Panama. Like I said, a lot of threats: housing and urban development, livestock farming, as well as non-timber crops, quarrying, hunting and trapping, dams and water management usage for these amphibians a lot of the time. Stopping water from moving, really bad for the amphibians. As well as invasive species, which I covered, is that chytrid fungus, as well as pollution. I'm looking to see. Also a salmonella strain also kind of took these guys out pretty drastically. They are international pets. I don't think I've seen any in any pet shops around me recently.
Looks
I
like,
also haven't been in many pet shops around me recently.
yeah, looks like it was mostly in the 70s. They were shipped to Germany as part of the international pet trade, and they're still collected, but it is now illegal to do so.
It is located in a couple private reserves, as well as the Zona Protectora Las Tablas, which is a reserve in, I believe, Costa Rica. They have a very well documented captive husbandry program. We have one in the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore, as well as in Cleveland at the Cleveland Zoo.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's all I have, Alex. What do you have for today's most wanted?
Our today's most wanted, we went with another plant. It is an aquatic plant, at least this time. It is called the water spinach, the Ipomoa aquatica, also called the swamp morning glory, native to Asia. It was introduced to the United States in the 90s as part of kind of horticulture. And the problem with this species is that it really crowds out a lot of the native species in the areas that it is found. It is also a problem because it will harbor a parasite called Fasciolopus bushki, or giant intestinal flukes. So this can be eaten. This plant can be eaten. It must be, these parasites must be gotten rid of by either frying or boiling before consumption. But they also are known to contain things such as thermotolerant coliforms, or these are like gut bacteria that are tolerant to those high temperatures, so they can still make you sick, as well as other protozoan parasites.
Anything else, Alex?
Not really. It's just that biggest thing is all those parasites that they find as well, as well as them being so, can readily grow in aquatic environments, and they will just outcompete native plants. And to the point where they're overrunning areas in like Florida and Texas.
All right. Oh, that'll kick it over to me for our From the Vault. Today's From the Vault is Eniobatrachus. This means the quarry 9 frog, which is an extinct genus of prehistoric frogs, known from the Morrison Formation from the late Jurassic period, as well as the early Cretaceous Sarmatili Formation in Morocco. Your type species is E. hecti. So that it's named after Quarry 9, where it was discovered in Wyoming, and another specimen was found within the Dinosaur National Monument, which I believe is it's on the border of Colorado and Utah. But that first specimen was only the ilium muscle, which is like the hip bones, right, Alex?
Yes.
Yes. And the specimens from Morocco are indeterminate on what individual species they are, but they are confirmed to be from this genus. That'll kick us back over to Alex. Well, it's more of a group conversation. Talk about keystone species today.
Yes, sir. So our discussion, keystone species, these are species that are of incredibly high importance in their respective ecosystems, some of them being like the wolf, especially the gray wolf, the elephant, even the beaver in some areas. So what a keystone species does is its role in its respective ecosystem and that kind of food web plays a very critical part. So in the example of the wolf, the typical case that is used for this is like Yellowstone National Park, where the wolves had been eradicated from that area, and thus the remaining herbivores just overran the park, and they overate their food supply, which then caused a drastic drop in their populations. So you had a lot of dead like elk and deer and even buffalo in the park. It was kind of the landscape was suffering for it. As well as, like you said, those herbivore populations were suffering because then they out ate themselves. So with the reintroduction of the wolf, it allowed for a top predator to be in that area. It controlled those populations of those large herbivores, which then allowed the native plants to recover. And now it is the Yellowstone that we know it as today. It's a very lush, green, beautiful landscape. Beavers do something similar with building their dams. They create like ponds and wetland areas that allow other species that prefer those areas to persist, as well as it allows an area that holds water in areas during dry seasons. It creates habitat by doing that. And then, of course, the African elephant and other large animals, they are major players in their respective ecosystems because of especially their size. They're able to do things like knock trees down in the case of the elephant, as well as their migration patterns create a lot of different areas where they come through, they'll eat a lot. And then when they eat, especially some larger fruits that only they eat, they actually help spread plants around. And they kind of create safe areas for some of those other organisms that are herbivores that they're tolerant of, because elephants can be somewhat territorial. And they allow for those organisms to have an area that they can feed readily. But also, the young are, or even a dead elephant, some of those carrion feeders are going to be very pleased with such a large, bountiful food from an elephant. Tyler, do you have anything more on keystone species?
Yeah, sometimes your keystone species doesn't have to be the largest thing. As I said, the beaver, it's not exactly the biggest thing, but it does. They're the ecosystem engineers is what they're called. They're able to create an environment for a whole bunch of other species to live based off of their dams. That's like prairie dogs out in the grasslands. Also, ecosystem engineers, they make a whole bunch of burrows that snakes and different bird species use as well. And even in the image Alex has, sea stars, I wasn't really listening too well, but I don't know if we covered that, but they eat the sea urchins and a whole bunch of other mussels and mollusks that don't exactly have natural predators to keep in track. So the sea stars, if you take them out, the mussels kind of run rampant.
Yes, yeah. It doesn't have to be something that's in a super high abundance. Even things as small as bees, because of the critical role that they play in the environment. That's the main part why they're called keystone. A keystone is something in like an arch. The keystone is the piece that is placed at the very peak of the arch that kind of holds the whole thing up, and without it, everything comes crashing down. And that is the why they're called that, because of the major importance that they play in their respective ecosystems.
Yeah, perfect. I have nothing else to add on that one, Alex. All right. Well, once again, I have been Tyler. That has been Alex. We encourage you to follow us on all our platforms if you haven't already. That includes Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of that. Send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com for your questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. I think that's all, Alex. What do we always say?
I think so. And as we always say at the end of every episode, keep on learning, learn something new. You'll never know what you find interesting. But I've been Alex, and that's been Tyler. And we thank you for joining us for another episode of Life, the Complete Story. And we will see you next time.